Mary, the mother of Jesus, is a figure whose story resonates across centuries, faiths, and cultures. She's revered, celebrated, and sometimes misunderstood. Her life is interwoven with profound themes of faith, courage, and devotion. Yet, understanding Mary fully can feel like an overwhelming task. She's not just a biblical character, but a cornerstone of many theological discussions, spiritual reflections, and cultural traditions. Today, I'm sharing my journey into discovering Mary's significance and why her story remains so vital to millions of people. Growing up in a Catholic family, Mary was always present in our household. Her image adorned walls. Her name was invoked in prayers, and her story was shared during church services. Yet, as a child, I never fully grasped her significance. To me, she was an important figure, yes, but also somewhat distant and enigmatic. As I moved through my teenage years, life became more about school, friends, and the struggles of growing up, and less about understanding faith. My connection to God felt more like a routine than a relationship. Mary became just another part of that routine, a name in prayers I'd barely thought about. It wasn't until my early 20s that I began to confront questions about faith more deeply. A relationship with someone of a different denomination opened my eyes to how others perceive Mary and Catholic traditions. My then partner, a Protestant, introduced me to his church community, where I encountered passionate sermons and heartfelt worship. Their love for Jesus was inspiring, but one sermon in particular left me unsettled. The pastor criticized the Catholic veneration of Mary, calling it idolatrous and unnecessary. I'd never heard anything like this before. To be honest, it shook me. Was my childhood faith misguided? Was I wrong to hold Mary in such high regard? These questions lingered even after the relationship ended. When I moved back home, I found myself at a spiritual crossroads. I felt a tug to explore these doubts rather than push them aside. I began praying for guidance, asking God to show me where I belonged and what I needed to learn. Slowly, I felt drawn back to my Catholic roots, but this time with a determination to understand my faith rather than simply inherit it. Mary became a focal point of this exploration. Who was she, really? Why did the church place so much emphasis on her? I started with the basics. The Annunciation, where the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, announcing that she would bear the Son of God. Her response, "Let it be done to me according to your word," struck me deeply. In that moment, Mary's humanity became clear to me. She wasn't some distant, untouchable figure. She was a young woman faced with an extraordinary, life-altering request. And she said yes, despite the uncertainty, fear, and potential consequences. This yes became a symbol of unwavering faith for me. Mary didn't have all the answers. She didn't know how everything would unfold, but she trusted God completely. How many times have I hesitated in my own life, waiting for guarantees before taking a leap of faith? Mary's example began to challenge me to trust more deeply in God's plan, even when it's unclear. I also delved into Catholic teachings about Mary. Her titles like Mother of God, Queen of Heaven, and Theotokos, meaning God-bearer. At first, these seemed lofty and almost intimidating. But as I learned more, I realized these titles weren't about elevating Mary above Jesus. They were about honoring her unique role in salvation history. Without her willingness to bear Christ, the story of redemption wouldn't be the same. One of the most transformative parts of this journey was discovering the Rosary. For years, I thought of it as a repetitive, perhaps outdated prayer. But one day, I felt a strong urge to pick up the beads and try. As I prayed, meditating on the mysteries of Christ's life through Mary's perspective, I experienced something unexpected: peace. The Rosary became a way to connect with God through Mary, seeing her not as a barrier but as a bridge. Her intercession felt like a mother's gentle guidance, pointing me always toward her Son. Mary's story also opened my eyes to the power of humility and service. In a world obsessed with status, power, and recognition, Mary's quiet strength stands out. She didn't seek glory or validation. Her life was a testament to selflessness and devotion. From the Nativity to the Crucifixion, she remained steadfast. Even when her heart was pierced with sorrow, her presence at the foot of the cross, witnessing her Son's suffering, revealed a depth of love and courage that I can only aspire to. As I continue this journey, I realize that Mary's story is more than a historical or theological narrative. It's an invitation to trust, to love, and to say yes to God's calling in our lives. She reminds us that faith isn't about having all the answers, but about being open to God's will, even when it's challenging. Mary's significance isn't limited to one denomination or tradition. She's a figure of hope, a symbol of faith, and an example of how God can work through anyone who is willing to say yes. Whether you see her as a mother, a guide, or simply an inspiring woman of faith, her story has something to teach us all. This journey of discovering Mary is far from over. There is so much more to learn, explore, and reflect upon. But one thing is clear: her story matters. It's a story of love, sacrifice, and unwavering faith that continues to inspire and challenge us to grow closer to God.